Welcome to the exciting and innovative future of Nexus. Please like, comment, share, and make sure to stay connected.
Hello everyone and welcome to another interesting session, and today we're going to actually be talking about the IELTS listening test. And in this test we're going to be understanding the basics, yes, the basics of the IELTS listening test, the structure, the tips, and how to actually scale or make your way around the test. Because um, many people complain that the IELTS listening test is one of their biggest challenges now, because there you have to listen to a particular conversation, all right, or use an audio that is being played to answer given questions. You have 40 questions to answer, right? And you're supposed to answer these questions with what? With an audio that you're going to be hearing. Do you understand? Now, the painful part, or actually the difficult part for most people, is the fact that you cannot play back, you cannot pause. So more like you don't have control over the audio. So it just plays one way, right? Section by section. It just plays one way, and you do what? And you have to just answer your question as quickly as possible. Now, there are tips that you should be aware of, that you should know, that would help you do what? Navigate those questions. And not only navigate those questions, answer them effectively. Do you understand? So now these are the tips we're going to actually be looking at today. But first of all, before we dive into that tip, we're going to look at our lesson objective. Now, the objective of this particular video is to help you, the listener, or you, the student, understand the IELTS listening test structure, number one, avoid common mistakes, and learn key strategies to improve performance immediately. Now, the first thing we're going to be looking at what is the test structure. Now, what is the structure of the IELTS test? The IELTS listening test, rather, is divided into four major sections. Now, these four sections are of what? Of increasing difficulty. Now, difficulty should not get into your head, because you might have heard the word, okay, difficult, and you feel, oh, this is something that is impossible for me to do. No, everyone can actually write IELTS successfully and make a good band score. But you have to first of all understand the strategy, understand the tricks and the tips on how to go about what this test. Now, these are the structure. The section one is a dialogue. Now, what is a dialogue? A conversation between two people. You would agree with me on that. Now, it could be, or possibly, a conversation between a receptionist and a customer, right? Or a conversation between, okay, probably someone is booking a reservation, or someone is making an inquiry for something, and then there is a conversation, a dialogue between the responder and the person who is asking the questions. Do you understand? Now, you could see questions like, let's say there's a conversation between someone who is booking a reservation for a hotel and the receptionist or the customer agent. Now, questions which will be possibly asked are possibly the name. The attendant will be actually asking for, okay, the full name of this person, and some part of the questions will be given to you. Possibly the person's name is Andrew Simon, right? Andrew Simon. Andrew might be given, and you're expected to fill in what? The blank space with what? With the next name. That's a completion of that particular name. So Andrew is given to you, and then you have to what? Complete it with Simon. So you have to listen effectively to when Andrew is going to be mentioned, and then you should know that, okay, what is coming next after Andrew is the second name, which is what? Simon. Right? So that is the structure. Now you have to pay keen attention, and we're still talking about the structure. We'll still dive deep into what? Into the strategy or the tips of how to go about this question. Now, and section one has to do with what? Everyday conversations. Everyday conversation, just the things you do on daily basis, right? Those dialogue. It could be a phone call. It could be one-on-one word conversation. So remember that section one has to do with what? Everyday conversation is what? Is a dialogue. So that you should pay attention to. Now, section two, very interestingly, is a monologue. Monologue has to do with one person. Now, I will give you a typical example. It could be, let's say, a tour guide, right? A tour guide. Now, there are groups of people who came for a tour, and then there is this one person who gives them instruction, or who is guiding them on how to navigate the facility, or how to go about the whole thing. You understand? Now, throughout the entire section, you're just going to be what? Listening or paying attention to this one person, right? Pay attention to this one person. And in this particular question type or in this particular section, the most common question type you find are number one, maps, diagrams, where you have to what? Fill in specific or actually label diagrams or fill in blank spaces with appropriate what? With appropriate information. The section one, like I mentioned, sorry I forgot to include that. The section one is mostly, right, form completion or sentence completion, or just you have to just complete or given blank spaces with what? With appropriate answers. Now, section three has to do with academic discussion. Now, academic discussion in what sense? It could be a discussion between what? Two students, or a student and what? His or her lecturer or his or her tutor, right? There's a conversation between these two people, and you have to use what? Every given information from that conversation to answer the given questions that are going to be given to you. Now, you possibly find what? The multiple choice question. Now, what are multiple choice questions? If you really want to know much about the multiple choice question, you could visit previous videos that I have made in this channel. Now, but I'm going to give you a brief of what the multiple choice question. Now, multiple choice questions are like our regular objective questions where you have to what? Pick a correct option from a list of given options. So take note of that. Now, section 4 has to do with academic lecture. So now, section 3 is a discussion, right? Section 4 is a lecture. Now, possibly a speaker could be given on what? Will be given an information about what? Or about a given topic, or a given topic, and a speaker is asked what to talk about it. Or a lecturer actually saying, just know that there is a lecture on a particular what? On a particular subject or a particular what? Topic. Possibly you could be listening to two people, but the major in person you should be listening to is what? Is the speaker. Now, you have a total of 40 questions in this section. Audio is played only once, and duration lasts with 30 minutes, right? Just around 30 minutes to possibly 40 minutes, right? And then you have 10 minutes to transfer to what? To your answer sheet. Now, this is something I want you to pay attention to. You have a question paper, right? Where your questions are written, and then you have an answer sheet. The mistake most people will do is dividing their attention, like I would call it. Dividing attention in what sense? You have your answer sheet where you're supposed to write down your answers, and then you have your question paper. And now you're listening to your audio, you're hearing your answers, and then you're immediately at that point, you're transferring your answers to where? To that answer sheet. No, you should entirely what? Forget that answer sheet for the meantime. Focus on the question. You can actually answer your question on that question paper. And then with the 10 minutes you have, you're transferring to what? To the answer sheet. Not transferring at the time you should be listening. Alright? Like I said, not transferring at the time you should be listening. Now the key tip is what? You don't get a second chance. Focus is everything. Focus is everything. Give everything in fact, your deepest attention. Your deepest attention is what you should give what? To the listening test. Now, listening test is not like the reading test where you have to like probably you have the opportunity to revisit a passage and be sure of your answer, or revisit a passage and get your answer if you skip. If you should skip for any reason in your listening test, there's every possibility that you're ruining the entire the remaining part of your question. For instance, let's assume you're in section 3, for instance, and you skipped let's say question 15. Let's just assume question 15 is in section 3. No, you can let's say question 25, right? Because you possibly have 10 questions in each section. 10 questions in each section. So section 3 should be around between question 20 and question 30, right? So you're in question 25, for instance, and you missed question 25. There's every possibility that you might miss even the remaining part of what? Of that particular section if you don't pay attention. Because you might still be stuck in finding out, or you might still be stuck in in getting the answer to question 25, and you don't really moved to what? To question 26. So you need to what? Give the listening test in general your what? Your rapt attention. Alright? Now, the second part we should look at, or the second thing we should look at is what? The common mistakes. Now, the common mistakes most candidates make is what? Number one, trying to understand every word. Trying to understand every word. Now, that should not be what you are paying attention to. You necessarily don't have to understand every word. The thing is, first, understand your question. Like I would always say, understand your question. If a word is giving you difficulty, and just don't pressure yourself to understand the word. If you know the word, fine, that is good for you. But don't put yourself under pressure of understanding every word. Secondly, losing focus after missing one answer. Like I just said earlier, right? Losing focus. You're still waiting for a particular answer and you've entirely forgotten that they've gone to the next question. Now, when I talked about difficulty in each section, as there's a transition to each section. Now, difficulty is not in the sense that probably the questions are going to be harder or stuff. No. Now, in section 1, you get the opportunity to have a little relaxation before the next answer. In fact, you would be aware that they are moving to section 2, or they are moving to question 2 rather. They are moving to the next question. For instance, and they mentioned the first answer. You would easily flow. That is what I'm trying to say. You would easily flow. You would easily follow the what? The question. Now, as there's a transition to section 2, right? You need to give it more attention because they are going faster. Faster, not in what? Not in will I say the speed of their speech? No. They will still be talking with the normal tempo, but the gap between this answer and the next answer will now be shorter. As there's a transition to section 3, the gap is what's becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. Do you understand? Till you get to section 4. In fact, section 4 is now the part that most people would get stuck. Alright? So your maximum attention is what is needed in this section. So make sure you don't lose focus after missing a particular answer. If you miss a particular answer, just don't worry about it. Go to the next one. Alright? So don't put all your attention to one particular place. Now, ignoring spelling mistakes. You might get a particular answer. Funny enough, you might get a particular answer right, but you misspelled that word, or you misspelled a word from the answers you're providing. It's a fail. Like, in fact, you completely failed that particular question. So make sure your spelling is well checked. Make sure your spelling is well checked. Now, the next common mistake is not reading questions beforehand. Not reading questions beforehand. This is one of the biggest killers of most candidates in the IELTS listening test. In fact, in the IELTS test in general. Not reading. From the audio, you would hear something like you have an opportunity to look at question 1 to question 5, or question this to question this. That is not the time for you to start transferring your answers. That is not the time for you to start transferring your answers, or probably doing something else, or probably checking if you did one part right or not. No, that is the time for you to pay attention to that particular question, that particular range of questions that they asked you to look at. Now, taking note of those questions is number 1, identifying keywords. What are keywords? I already explained keywords in a previous video, but now I'm going to give a quick recap. Keywords are important words that help you navigate or find your answers quickly. They are helping words, right? You know that, okay, let's assume they say agriculture in Africa is rapidly growing, or agriculture in Africa has recorded over 80% growth in the last 10 years. Now, what are the keywords there? Agriculture is one. Now, agriculture cannot be your only keyword. Because what if the entire section is actually talking about agriculture, and possibly agriculture in different countries or in different continents? So agriculture, taking agriculture as your only keyword is like you shooting yourself in the leg. Now, agriculture is one keyword, Africa is another keyword, right? 80%, right? 10 years. Now, agriculture in Africa has recorded over 80% increase in the last 10 years. That is the sentence, right? Now, imagine they are taking out one particular place and then they're putting a blank space for you to fill. Now, agriculture in dash has recorded over dash increase in the last 10 years. You're supposed to fill in Africa and what? And 10 and 80%. Africa and 80% is our answer. But the keywords you should know: agriculture, number one keyword, 10 years. So agriculture, increase, and 10 years has done what? Has become your keyword. Now, if you should hear anything related to those words, now IELTS can be actually very tricky, that they don't mention the exact word or they don't give you the exact word. They might use synonyms. So you need to pay attention to, probably they replace increase with what other word should I use for increase? They replace increase with probably another word that is similar in meaning to increase, right? Or replace it with growth. So things like that. So pay attention to what? To those words. And make sure you actually read, take note of the questions before the audio starts. That will give you what? So now this is another reason, or this is another thing taking note of those questions beforehand does. You might still be stuck in a particular question, waiting for the answer to that particular question, and you don't know the skips to the next one. Now, what will give you the idea that they've actually skipped to the next question? What gives you the idea is you've taken note of these questions beforehand. You might see something or you might hear a particular word, right? That triggers your memory to the fact that you've seen this word in another question. And you know that, oh, they've actually left this particular one I'm waiting for and they've moved to the next one. And that way, you don't get lost, right? So, one of the common mistakes is what? Not reading questions beforehand. Now, the last common mistake is what? Panicking when speakers talk fast. Now, talking fast, like I said earlier, doesn't have to do with the tempo, but the gap between one answer and the next answer, right? They might just make a straight sentence, and that sentence has answered actually three questions. Like that one sentence has actually answered three questions, and you have to be very what? Very careful, and you have to pay what? So much attention. So panicking when speakers talk fast. Once you start developing that panic and that nervousness in that particular stage, there's every possibility that you might miss out the whole thing. So you have to still remain calm and what? And focused. Now the key tip is what? You don't need 100% understanding to get a band 7 plus. You don't need what? 100% understanding. You might not entirely understand the conversation. What? In fact, your interest is not to know or to understand everything that is being said, right? The major thing you should do what is make sure you're getting your answers. Like I would say, or I would tell most of my students in my physical classes is follow the conversation, but don't get lost in it. Follow the conversation, but don't get lost in it. Following it to get your answers, right? And don't get lost so you don't miss what? Your answers. So that is one thing I need you to actually pay attention to. Now, the third thing we're going to be looking at is what? Is the core skill. The core skill in what? Predicting answers. Now, before the audio starts, read questions carefully. Underline keywords. I already explained what keywords are to you. Underline your keywords. What? Predict the type of answer. Now, the type of answer, is it going to be a number, a name, or a date? Like the example I used initially, I said agriculture in dash has what? Has gained over 80% dash in 10 years. Has gained over dash dash in 10 years. Let's dash increase in 10 years. Now, we know that Africa in, that's talking about a place, right? Dash increase. We are possibly looking at what? A percentage in increase. So percentage in increase is actually going to be possibly a number, right? Possibly a number. Let's just say possibly a number. But another thing you should also pay attention to is what the instruction, right? The instruction. The instruction could tell you write no more than 2 words, or write just a number, or just whatever the instruction tells you. That is actually going to guide you what in predicting the type of answer you should provide. Now, an example is what the meeting is on dash. The meeting is on dash. Now, it is likely a day or a date. It's either what on Monday or on what the 12th. So do you get the idea? So you should be able to predict, okay, now my answers are actually this type of or this category of answer. Is it going to be a number, a name, a date, a place, etc.? You get that? Now, this helps you listen with what? With purpose. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is what? Listen for keywords and paraphrasing. Listen for keywords and paraphrasing. Now, I'm going to read out this. It said the audio will not repeat the exact word in the question. Like I said before, don't expect to get the exact word. Don't expect to hear the audio word for word. No, they would most times, use what? Synonyms. So you need to pay attention to that. Bear in mind. So it's going to, so they will not throw you off balance. Now, you must listen for synonyms and paraphrases, right? Example, the question might say cheap hotel, and the audio is saying affordable accommodation. You can see that cheap hotel, and the audio is saying affordable accommodation. Now, when we say I didn't see cheap hotel, I didn't see cheap hotel anyway. No, affordable accommodation has actually covered or actually replaced the word cheap hotel. So listen for what? For keywords and what? And paraphrasing. Now, spelling and accuracy. Spelling and what? And accuracy. Now, spelling matters as little as, see, just missing a particular letter can ruin your entire answer. If let's assume a question is actually, the answer to a question is actually expressed in its plural form, and you put it in a singular form without the S or without the IES or what, you've missed it. You've missed that particular question. So number one, you need to pay attention to the answer, and then you need to correctly spell it. Pay attention to the answer and do what? And correctly spell it. That is one thing you need to do. Alright? So not only getting your answer, yes, getting your answer is one thing, but like spelling it correctly is another thing. So you need to pay attention to what? To that. Now, spelling matters in IELTS listening. The common problems are what? Names, or common problem areas are what? Names, places, plurals. Like I said, plurals. So pay attention to that. See, write clearly and check during transfer time. So your transfer time, the 10 minutes you have after answering the whole question from section 1 to section 4, should be used to do what? To check your spellings and then what? Put your answer correctly. Now, the last part we're going to look at what is a practice task, and this is for you. Now, I'm going to actually drop a short clip after this, right? I'm going to drop a short clip, a short audio, and give you a question. I'm going to actually put a question up for you to answer. Now, I would need you to provide the answers to this question what in the comment section, right? Put the answer to this question in the comment section, and anyone who would successfully get this question on one trial, please, on one trial, help yourself. On one trial, get the answers to these questions correctly. The person gets the chance or the person earns a free consultation with what? With me. A free consultation with me. Now, what are the benefits of this consultation? Possibly, you might earn yourself just free explanation of what? Of your weak areas. We're going to work on your weak areas and then make it what? Your strength for free. Do you get that? So I'm going to put up the question after, and the audio and the question after this particular video. So once again, do not forget to like, to share, to subscribe, and turn on your notification, right, for all our posts. Remember, this is Nexus Hub, and Nexus Hub is your one-time stop, or is your one-stop or one-time solution to every IELTS related problems or issues. Do you get that? So I'll catch you up next time on the next video. Do have a nice day.
Please like, comment, share, and make sure to stay connected.